Evan Carter stood in the small, dimly lit apartment, his polished shoes contrasting sharply with the worn carpet beneath him. Jacob stared at the man, unsure of what to say or do. The stranger's presence felt surreal, like a character from a story stepping into real life. "Who are you?" Jacob asked again, his voice tinged with suspicion. Evan smiled gently, as if sensing Jacob's unease. "I told you, my name is Evan Carter. I'm here because I think I can help you." Jacob shook his head, still confused. "Help me? How?" Evan glanced around the room, taking in the peeling paint on the walls, the mismatched furniture, and the faint smell of dampness that lingered in the air. His gaze softened when he noticed Laura lying on the couch, her frail form barely visible under the blanket. She looked up at him curiously, her eyes filled with both curiosity and caution. "I've been watching you," Evan said, turning back to Jacob. "Watching me?" Jacob repeated, his tone sharp now. "What do you mean?" Evan raised his hands in a calming gesture. "Not in a creepy way, I promise. I saw you at the subway station earlier today. You were shining shoes, working hard despite everything. When I saw how much effort you put into something so simple, it made me want to learn more about you." Jacob frowned. "And what did you learn?" "That you're a good man," Evan replied simply. "A man who's doing everything he can to take care of his wife, even when the odds are stacked against him. That kind of determination deserves recognition and maybe a little help." Jacob opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. What could he say? This stranger was right. He was trying his best, but his best wasn't enough. Every day felt like a losing battle, and he didn't know how much longer he could keep fighting. Laura spoke up from the couch, her voice weak but steady. "Why would you help us? We don't even know you." Evan turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Because sometimes people need a hand to lift them up. I've been in tough situations before, and I know how it feels to think there's no way out. If I can make things easier for someone else, why wouldn't I?" Jacob and Laura exchanged glances, unsure of whether to trust this man. He seemed sincere, but they had learned the hard way that not everyone had good intentions. "What exactly do you have in mind?" Jacob asked cautiously. Evan reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a sleek black card. He handed it to Jacob, who took it hesitantly. The card read, "Carter Innovations, Advanced Technology Solutions." Below the company name was a phone number and an address. "This is my business," Evan explained. "We specialize in cutting-edge technology, particularly in logistics and supply chain management. Right now, we're looking for someone trustworthy to handle deliveries and inventory coordination. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well and offers opportunities for growth." Jacob stared at the card, his heart pounding. Was this real? Could this be the break he'd been praying for? "I don't have any experience with that kind of work," Jacob admitted. "I've never even worked in an office before." Evan shrugged. "That doesn't matter. Skills can be taught. What matters is your attitude and willingness to learn. From what I've seen, you're a hard worker. That's all I need." Jacob looked at Laura, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. She couldn't speak, but her eyes said everything. "Take the chance." "Okay," Jacob said finally. "But why are you doing this? Why me?" Evan smiled. "Let's just say I believe in second chances. And I think you're someone who'll make the most of this opportunity." The next morning, Jacob woke up earlier than usual. He showered, shaved, and dressed in the cleanest clothes he owned, a pair of jeans and a faded blue shirt. As he prepared to leave, Laura called out to him. "Good luck," she said softly. "Thanks," Jacob replied, forcing a smile. Inside, he felt a mix of excitement and dread. What if he messed this up? What if Evan changed his mind once he realized how inexperienced Jacob really was? When Jacob arrived at the address on the card, he found himself standing in front of a towering glass building. The words Carter Innovations were etched in bold letters above the entrance. People in suits bustled in and out, their faces serious and focused. Jacob swallowed nervously. This place was a world away from the subway station where he'd spent the past few weeks. He stepped inside and approached the reception desk. A young woman with a friendly smile greeted him. "Hi, I'm here to see Evan Carter," Jacob said. Clutching the business card tightly, the receptionist nodded and picked up the phone. After a brief conversation, she directed Jacob to the elevator. "12th floor," she said. "Mr. Carter is expecting you." Jacob rode the elevator in silence, his heart racing. When the doors opened, he stepped into a spacious office area. Modern furniture and sleek computer screens lined the room, and employees moved efficiently between desks. At the far end, Evan stood waiting, his arms crossed and a welcoming smile on his face. "You made it," Evan said as Jacob approached. "I did," Jacob replied, feeling out of place among the polished surroundings. "Come on. Let me show you around," Evan said, leading Jacob through the office. Over the next hour, Evan introduced Jacob to the team and explained the basics of the job. He showed him how to track shipments, organize inventory, and communicate with suppliers. Though the task seemed complicated at first, Evan assured Jacob that he would catch on quickly. By the end of the day, Jacob's head was spinning with new information. But despite the overwhelm, he felt a spark of hope. For the first time in months, he had something to look forward to. On his way home, Jacob stopped at a grocery store. With the advance payment Evan had given him, he bought fresh fruits, vegetables, and even a small bouquet of flowers for Lavra. When he walked through the door, she looked up in surprise. "What's all this?" she asked, smiling despite her fatigue. "It's a start," Jacob said, setting the bags on the counter. As they sat together, eating a proper meal for the first time in weeks, Jacob felt a weight lift off his shoulders. This wasn't just about money, it was about dignity. About proving to himself that he could rise above his circumstances. But deep down, Jacob knew this was only the beginning. There were still challenges ahead, and he couldn't afford to lose focus. With Evan's help, though, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Months passed, and Jacob's life settled into a rhythm of stability and purpose. Each morning, he woke up early, kissed Lavra goodbye, and headed to work with a sense of pride. His role at Carter Innovations had grown beyond logistics. He was now seen as a leader, someone who inspired others with his determination and kindness. The employees respected him not just for his skills, but for the way he treated everyone: junior staff, senior managers, and delivery drivers alike, with fairness and compassion. Lavra, too, thrived in her own way. Her job at the library gave her a renewed sense of independence, and she loved being surrounded by books again. On weekends, she and Jacob explored the city, visiting parks, museums, and small cafes they had never noticed before. Life felt lighter, brighter, as if the heavy clouds that had once loomed over them had finally lifted. But Jacob hadn't forgotten where he came from. Every week, he returned to the subway station where he used to shine shoes. He didn't go there to work anymore, he went to help. With Evan's blessing, he had started a small initiative called Second Chances, aimed at providing jobs and resources to people struggling like he once had. One chilly Saturday morning, Jacob arrived at the station with boxes of supplies, shoe polish kits, gloves, hats, and snacks. A group of volunteers joined him, eager to assist. Together, they set up tables and handed out essentials to anyone who needed them. "Mr. Harper," called out a familiar voice. Jacob turned to see Tommy, a young man he had met months ago when Tommy was living on the streets. Back then, Tommy had been desperate, barely scraping by with odd jobs. Now, thanks to Jacob's mentorship, Tommy worked part-time at Carter Innovations while taking online courses to earn his high school diploma. "Tommy," Jacob exclaimed, shaking his hand warmly. "How are you doing?" "I'm good, sir," Tommy replied, smiling. Thanks to you, I've got a roof over my head and food on the table. I wanted to stop by and say thank you. Jacob patted him on the shoulder. You don't have to thank me. You're the one doing the hard work. Keep it up, okay? Tommy nodded enthusiastically. I will, and maybe someday I'll be able to help others like you helped me. As the day went on, Jacob spoke to dozens of people, some hopeful, some broken, all searching for a way forward. He listened to their stories, offered advice, and shared his own journey whenever he thought it might inspire someone. By the end of the afternoon, he felt drained but fulfilled. That evening, as Jacob and Lavra sat together on the couch, she looked at him with admiration. You've done so much for so many people, she said. Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Jacob chuckled. Sometimes. But then I remember how far we've come and how much farther we can go if we keep helping each other. Lavra smiled. You're incredible, Jacob. Truly. The next day, Jacob received an unexpected email from Evan. It was brief but intriguing. Meet me at the office tomorrow morning. There's something important I need to discuss. Curious, Jacob arrived early the following day. When he stepped into Evan's office, he found the older man sitting behind his desk, a stack of papers in front of him. Close the door, Evan said, gesturing for Jacob to sit. What's going on? Jacob asked, his curiosity growing. Evan leaned back in his chair, his expression serious but kind. I've decided to step down as CEO of Carter Innovations. Jacob's eyes widened. Why? Why? It's time, Evan replied simply. I've been running this company for decades, and I want to focus on spending more time with my family. Besides, I think it's time for fresh leadership, someone who understands the heart of this company, not just its operations. Jacob shook his head. But there are plenty of qualified candidates. People who've been here longer than me. Evan smiled. Yes, there are. But none of them embody what this company stands for better than you do. Jacob, I want you to take over as CEO. For a moment, Jacob couldn't breathe. The words echoed in his mind, refusing to sink in. Him, CEO? It seemed impossible, like a dream too big to be real. I don't know what to say, Jacob stammered. Say yes, Evan urged. You've proven yourself every step of the way. You care about the people here, and you understand the importance of giving back. That's exactly the kind of leader this company needs. Jacob hesitated, his thoughts racing. Could he really handle such a responsibility? What if he failed? Seeing his doubt, Evan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You won't be alone. I'll stay on as an advisor until you're ready to lead on your own. Trust me, Jacob, you're ready. After a long pause, Jacob nodded. Okay, I'll do it. Over the next few months, Jacob transitioned into his new role. Evan guided him through the complexities of running a company, teaching him everything from financial planning to strategic decision-making. At first, Jacob felt out of his depth, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of responsibility. But with Laura's support and Evan's guidance, he slowly gained confidence. Under Jacob's leadership, Carter Innovations flourished. He expanded the Second Chances program, partnering with local shelters and community organizations to provide training and employment opportunities for those in need. He also invested in research and development, ensuring the company remained at the forefront of technological innovation. One evening, as Jacob reviewed quarterly reports in his office, Laura walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. Long day? She asked, handing him a cup. Jacob sighed, leaning back in his chair. A little, but it's worth it. Laura smiled. You've come so far, Jacob. From shining shoes to running a company. It's incredible. Jacob laughed softly. It still feels surreal sometimes, like I'm living someone else's life. Well, it's your life now, Laura said, and you're making the most of it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their coffee. Finally, Jacob spoke. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Evan hadn't stopped? By that night, Laura thought for a moment. Maybe, but I think things happen for a reason. We were meant to meet him, just like he was meant to meet that stranger who helped him years ago. It's like a chain reaction, one act of kindness leading to another. Jacob nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. You're right. And I want to make sure that chain keeps going. Years later, Jacob stood on stage at a charity gala hosted by Carter Innovations. The room was filled with employees, partners, and beneficiaries of the Second Chances program. As he looked out at the crowd, he felt a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for everyone who had contributed to the company's success. When I started working at Carter Innovations, Jacob began, his voice steady, I never imagined I'd be standing here today. I was just a man trying to save his wife, trying to survive. But along the way, I learned something important. No matter how hard life gets, there's always hope. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in you, to give you a chance. He paused, glancing at Evan, who sat in the front row, smiling proudly. To everyone here tonight, I want to say thank you. Thank you for believing in me, in us, and in the power of kindness. Together, we've built something extraordinary. Something that proves second chances aren't just possible, they're essential. The room erupted in applause, and Jacob stepped off the stage, his heart full. As he rejoined Lavra, she wrapped her arms around him. You were amazing, she whispered. So were you, Jacob replied, kissing her forehead. In that moment, surrounded by the people who mattered most, Jacob knew they had truly found their happily ever after, not because life had become perfect, but because they had faced its imperfections together. The cabin was quiet except for the crackling of the fire and the occasional rustle of leaves outside. Jacob, Lavra, and Evan sat around the fireplace, their faces glowing in the warm light. The evening had been filled with laughter and conversation. But now the mood shifted as Evan leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. I've been meaning to tell you something, Evan said, his voice calm but serious. Something that might explain why I've been so invested in helping you both. Jacob and Lavra exchanged glances, surprised by the sudden change in tone. What do you mean? Jacob asked, his brow furrowing. Evan hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. Years ago, I was in a similar situation. My wife, her name was Claire, was diagnosed with a rare illness. We didn't have much money, and I was working odd jobs just to keep us afloat. It felt like the world was crumbling around me. Jacob listened intently, sensing the weight of Evan's story. One day, Evan continued, a stranger helped me. He gave me a job when no one else would, and it changed everything. Because of him, I was able to afford Claire's treatment. She got better, and we had a few wonderful years together before she passed away from complications unrelated to her illness. Evan paused, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. When I saw you at the subway station, Jacob, I saw myself all those years ago, desperate, scared, but still trying your best. I wanted to pay it forward, to give you the same chance someone once gave me. Lavra reached out and placed a gentle hand on Evan's arm. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. You've given us more than just hope, you've given us a future. Evan smiled, though there was sadness in his eyes. I'm glad I could help. But this isn't just about me or you, Jacob. It's about what comes next. About how you use this opportunity to make a difference. Jacob nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He realized now that Evan's kindness wasn't just about charity. It was about creating a chain reaction of goodwill. The rest of the weekend passed quickly, filled with peaceful moments and heartfelt conversations. When they returned home, Jacob and Lavra felt rejuvenated, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Back at work, Jacob threw himself into his responsibilities with even greater enthusiasm. His promotion to senior logistics manager had brought new challenges, but also new opportunities. He worked closely with Evan to streamline operations, implement cost-saving measures, and improve overall efficiency. Under his leadership, the delivery team became a model of productivity, earning praise from clients and colleagues alike. But Jacob didn't stop there. Inspired by Evan's story, he began looking for ways to give back. He started mentoring junior employees, sharing tips and advice to help them grow in their roles. He also organized donation drives within the company, collecting funds and supplies for local charities. One afternoon, as Jacob sorted through a pile of paperwork, Maria, the same woman who had trained him during his first days at Carter Innovations, approached his desk. "Hey, Jacob," she said, smiling. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course," Jacob replied, gesturing for her to sit. Maria hesitated, then spoke quietly. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done for the team. You've really made a difference here." Jacob felt a warmth spread through his chest. "I couldn't have done it without you guys. You were the one who taught me the ropes, remember?" Maria laughed. "True, but you've taken it to another level. Everyone looks up to you now." Jacob shook his head modestly. "I'm just doing my best. That's all anyone can ask for." As the weeks turned into months, Laura's health continued to improve. The treatments had worked wonders, and she was finally strong enough to return to part-time work. She took a position at a small community library, where she spent her days surrounded by books and people who appreciated her knowledge and kindness. Seeing Laura thrive filled Jacob with pride and gratitude. They celebrated each milestone: her first day back at work, her first paycheck, her first outing with friends, with quiet joy. Life was far from perfect, but it was good. Better than either of them had dared to hope. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Laura turned to Jacob with a mischievous grin. "You know what we should do?" she asked. "What?" Jacob replied, curious. "We should host a dinner party," Laura said. "Invite Evan, Maria, and some of the people from your office. Show them how grateful we are for everything they've done." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "A dinner party? Are you sure you're up for that?" "I'm sure," Laura insisted. "It doesn't have to be fancy, just meaningful." Jacob smiled, touched by the idea. "Okay, let's do it." They spent the next week preparing for the event, cleaning the apartment, cooking dishes from scratch, and sending out invitations. On the night of the dinner, the small space buzzed with laughter and conversation. Evan arrived early, bringing along a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers for Laura. "This is amazing," Evan said, looking around at the cozy setup. "You two have come so far." "It's all thanks to you," Jacob replied, raising his glass in a toast. "To second chances and to the people who believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves." Everyone clinked glasses, their faces glowing with warmth and camaraderie. After dinner, as the guests mingled, Laura pulled Jacob aside. "There's something I want to show you," she said, leading him to the bedroom. On the bed lay a framed photograph of the two of them, taken during their trip to the cabin. Beneath it was a handwritten note: "To Jacob, my hero. Thank you for never giving up." Tears welled up in Jacob's eyes as he read the words. "Laura," she hugged him tightly. "You've always been my rock, Jacob. Through every dark moment, you never stopped fighting for us. I'll never forget that." Jacob held her close, overwhelmed by emotion. He realized now that their journey wasn't just about survival, it was about love. Love that had carried them through the darkest times and brought them to this moment of peace and happiness. As the evening wound down, Jacob stood by the door, thanking each guest as they left. When Evan stepped outside, he turned back to Jacob with a smile. "You've done well," Evan said. "Better than I ever imagined." "Because of you," Jacob replied. "You changed our lives." Evan shook his head. "No, Jacob, you did. That All I did was open the door. You're the one who walked through it and kept walking, no matter what." With those words, Evan disappeared into the night, leaving Jacob standing in the doorway, reflecting on how far they had come. Inside, Laura was tidying up the living room, humming softly to herself. Jacob watched her, marveling at her strength and resilience. "What are you thinking about?" Laura asked, noticing his gaze. "Just US," Jacob replied. "How lucky I am to have you." Laura smiled, her eyes shining with love. "We're lucky to have each other." And in that moment, Jacob knew they truly were. Jacob spent the rest of the day in a daze. The documents Evan had shown him swirled in his mind like pieces of a puzzle he was desperate to solve. He couldn't stop thinking about the trial program and what it could mean for Laura. Could this really be the answer they had been praying for? Or was it too good to be true? When he got home that evening, Laura was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Her face lit up when she saw him, but Jacob's expression gave her pause. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "Nothing's wrong," Jacob replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Actually, it's something amazing." He sat down beside her and explained everything. Evan had told him about the cutting-edge treatments being developed at Carter Innovations, about the trial program, and about the possibility of Laura participating. As he spoke, he watched her face closely, searching for any sign of fear or doubt. To his relief, her eyes sparkled with hope. "This could actually work," Laura said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "This could really help me." Jacob nodded, though his heart still felt heavy with uncertainty. "It's risky, Laura. They're still testing it, and there are no guarantees. But if it works..." His voice trailed off as tears filled his eyes. "If it works, you could get better. You could have your life back." Laura reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "We've come so far already, Jacob. I trust you. And I trust Evan. If this is our chance, we have to take it." The next morning, Jacob met with Evan again to discuss the details. Evan explained that the trial program involved a series of treatments over several months. While the procedure showed promise, it was still experimental, which meant there were risks. Evan assured Jacob that Laura would be under constant medical supervision and that the team at Carter Innovations was committed to ensuring her safety. "If you're both willing, we can start the process right away," Evan said. Jacob didn't hesitate. "We're ready." Over the next few days, Laura underwent a battery of tests to determine if she was eligible for the trial. Jacob accompanied her to every appointment, holding her hand through blood draws, scans, and consultations. The doctors were cautious but optimistic, explaining that Laura's condition made her an ideal candidate for the treatment. Finally, the day came for Laura's first session. Jacob waited anxiously in the hospital lobby while she was taken to the treatment room. Every minute felt like an hour, and he found himself pacing back and forth, replaying worst-case scenarios in his head. What if something went wrong? What if the treatment didn't work? But then Laura emerged, pale but smiling, leaning on a nurse for support. Jacob rushed to her side, his heart pounding. "How do you feel?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm okay," Laura replied, squeezing his arm reassuringly. "It's just a lot to take in." They returned home in silence, both exhausted but hopeful. Over the following weeks, Laura continued with the treatments, each one bringing them closer to answers. Meanwhile, Jacob threw himself into his work, channeling his nerves into productivity. He pored over logistics reports, streamlined delivery schedules, and mentored his team with newfound energy. Work became his refuge, a place where he could focus on something tangible instead of the endless waiting and worrying. Evan noticed Jacob's dedication and called him into his office one afternoon. "You're doing incredible work," Evan said, leaning back in his chair. "I've never seen someone grow so much in such a short time." Jacob smiled, though modestly. I owe it all to you. If you hadn't given me this chance, none of this would be possible." Evan shook his head. "You did the hard work, Jacob. All I did was open the door. Now it's up to you to walk through it." Jacob nodded, grateful for Evan's faith in him. But deep down, he knew his success wasn't just for himself. It was for Laura, for the life they dreamed of building together. As the months passed, subtle changes began to appear in Laura's health. She grew stronger, able to sit up for longer periods without feeling fatigued. Her appetite improved, and color returned to her cheeks. One evening, as they sat together watching TV, Laura turned to Jacob with a mischievous grin. "I think I'm ready to try walking again," she said. Jacob's eyes widened. "Are you sure? We don't have to rush anything." "I'm sure," Laura insisted. "I feel stronger every day. I want to see how far I can go." With Jacob's help, Laura stood slowly, gripping his arms for support. Her legs wobbled beneath her, but she took a shaky step forward, then another, and another. By the time they reached the end of the hallway, tears streamed down both their faces. "We're going to be okay," Laura whispered, clinging to Jacob. "We're really going to be okay." Jacob hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by gratitude. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe it. At work, Jacob's achievements continued to pile up. Under his leadership, the delivery team became more efficient, reducing delays and improving customer satisfaction. Evan promoted him to senior logistics manager, a role that came with greater responsibility and a significant raise. With the extra income, Jacob was finally able to afford luxuries they had long denied themselves. He bought Laura a comfortable recliner chair, upgraded their groceries to include fresh produce and lean meats, and even splurged on a new mattress for their bed. Each purchase felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming the life they had lost. One evening, as Jacob flipped through channels on the TV, Laura rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you remember when we used to dream about traveling?" she asked, her voice wistful. Jacob chuckled. "How could I forget? You wanted to visit Paris, and I wanted to hike in the Rockies." "Well," Laura said, sitting up slightly, "maybe it's time we started dreaming again." Jacob looked at her, surprised. "You mean now?" "Why not?" Laura replied. "We've been through so much, Jacob. We deserve to live a little. Even if it's just a weekend getaway somewhere." "Close." Jacob thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "Okay, let's plan something. Somewhere peaceful where you can relax and enjoy yourself." They spent the rest of the evening browsing travel websites, laughing at silly hotel reviews, and debating which destination would be best. For the first time in years, their conversation wasn't dominated by bills, treatments, or worries about the future. It was about possibilities. The next day, Jacob shared the news with Evan during their weekly meeting. "We're planning a trip," Jacob said, unable to hide his excitement. "Just a short one, but it's a start." Evan grinned. "That's fantastic, Jacob. You've earned it. Take all the time you need." Jacob hesitated. "Actually, I wanted to ask, would you like to join us? Not for the whole trip, of course, but maybe for dinner or something. You've done so much for us, and I'd love for you to meet Laura properly." Evan looked touched. "I'd be honored," he said. "Thank you for inviting me." A few weeks later, Jacob and Laura set off on their mini vacation, a cozy cabin. Nestled in the woods, surrounded by towering trees and crisp autumn air, they spent their days hiking, reading, and simply enjoying each other's company. On the final evening, Evan arrived for dinner, bringing along a bottle of wine and a warm smile. As they sat around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter, Jacob felt a profound sense of gratitude. This journey from despair to hope, from struggle to renewal, had taught him the value of resilience, kindness, and second chances. And as he looked at Laura, glowing with health and happiness, he realized something else. Sometimes, all it takes is one act of generosity to change everything, not just for yourself, but for those you love. Jacob woke up early the next morning, his mind buzzing with thoughts of the day ahead. He had never imagined he would be working in an office, surrounded by people who seemed so confident and put together. The memory of yesterday's orientation replayed in his head, the rows of desks, the hum of computers, the polite nods from employees who probably thought he didn't belong there. But Jacob reminded himself that he wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there to work hard, learn quickly, and provide for Laura. That was all that mattered. He dressed carefully, choosing the cleanest clothes he owned again. As he tied his worn-out sneakers, he glanced at Laura, still asleep on the couch. Her breathing was shallow, but she looked peaceful. Jacob wished he could stay longer, watch over her, make sure she was comfortable. But he couldn't afford to be late, not today, not ever. When Jacob arrived at Carter Innovations, Evan greeted him warmly. "Ready for your first real day?" he asked, handing Jacob a clipboard. "As ready as I'll ever be," Jacob replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Evan chuckled. "Don't worry, you'll do fine. Just take it one step at a time." For the rest of the morning, Jacob shadowed one of the senior logistics coordinators, a woman named Maria. She was patient and explained everything clearly, showing him how to check inventory lists, update shipment statuses, and communicate with delivery drivers. At first, Jacob struggled to keep up. The computer system was complicated, and he wasn't used to typing quickly or navigating spreadsheets. But Maria encouraged him, reminding him that everyone starts somewhere. By lunchtime, Jacob's head was spinning. He sat in the break room, staring at his sandwich without much appetite. Around him, other employees chatted casually about their weekends or upcoming projects. Jacob felt like an outsider, someone who didn't belong in this world of polished professionalism. But then he remembered Evan's words, "Skills can be taught. What matters is your attitude." Jacob took a deep breath and resolved to push through. After lunch, Jacob returned to his tasks with renewed determination. Slowly but surely, things began to click. He figured out how to log shipments into the system and even managed to resolve a minor issue with a delayed delivery. By the end of the day, he felt a small sense of accomplishment. It wasn't much, but it was progress. On his way home, Jacob stopped at a pharmacy to pick up some medication for Laura. For the first time in months, he didn't have to worry about whether he could afford it. The relief was overwhelming. When he got back to the apartment, Laura greeted him with a smile. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. "It was good," Jacob said, setting the pharmacy bag on the counter. "I mean, it was tough, but I think I'm starting to get the hang of things." Laura nodded approvingly. "That's wonderful, Jacob. I knew you could do it." Her faith in him meant more than she realized. Jacob smiled, feeling a flicker of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Jacob threw himself into his new job. He stayed late to practice using the computer system, asked questions whenever he didn't understand something, and studied the company handbook during his breaks. His efforts didn't go unnoticed. Evan often stopped by his desk to check on his progress, offering advice or simply praising him for his hard work. "You're doing great," Evan said one afternoon as Jacob updated a particularly tricky shipment schedule. "I knew you had potential." "Thanks," Jacob replied, though he still felt like he had a lot to learn. Outside of work, Jacob noticed changes at home too. With a steady paycheck coming in, he was able to buy healthier food and even pay off some of their overdue bills. Laura's health remained fragile, but she seemed a little stronger, a little happier. They spent evenings talking about the future, something they hadn't done in months. One evening, after dinner, Laura asked Jacob about his job. "What's it like working at Carter Innovations? Do you enjoy it?" Jacob thought for a moment before answering. "It's different from anything I've ever done before. Some days are frustrating because I don't know what I'm doing. But I like it. It feels good to be part of something bigger, you know?" Lavra smiled. I'm proud of you, Jacob. You've worked so hard for us. Her words filled him with warmth, but they also reminded him of how much he still needed to accomplish. Lavra deserved more than just scraped-together meals and second-hand furniture. She deserved a life free from worry, where she could focus on getting better instead of worrying about money. Determined to keep improving, Jacob began arriving at work earlier each day. He volunteered for extra tasks, eager to prove himself. One morning, Evan approached him with a proposal. I've been thinking, Evan said, leaning against Jacob's desk. You've been doing such a great job that I'd like to give you a bit more responsibility. How would you feel about managing a small team of delivery coordinators? Jacob froze, stunned. Me? Managing a team? Evan nodded. You've earned it. Plus, I think it'll help you grow even faster. Jacob hesitated. The idea of leading others intimidated him. What if he failed? What if his team didn't respect him? Seeing his hesitation, Evan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You won't be alone. I'll guide you every step of the way. Trust me, Jacob, you're ready for this. Taking a deep breath, Jacob nodded. Okay, I'll try. The following week, Jacob officially took charge of a small group of delivery coordinators. At first, he felt overwhelmed, unsure of how to delegate tasks or handle conflicts. But slowly, he found his rhythm. He listened to his team's concerns, offered guidance when needed, and celebrated their successes alongside them. To his surprise, they responded well to his leadership. As the weeks turned into months, Jacob continued to excel. His confidence grew, and so did his skills. He learned how to analyze data, optimize delivery routes, and negotiate contracts with suppliers. Each new challenge pushed him further, helping him discover strengths he never knew he had. But despite his growing success, Jacob never forgot why he was working so hard. Every paycheck went toward Laura's treatment. Every promotion brought them closer to stability. And every night, no matter how tired he was, he made sure to spend time with her, sharing stories about his day and listening to hers. One evening, as Jacob sat beside Lavra on the couch, he noticed something different about her. Her cheeks had a hint of color, and her eyes sparkled in a way they hadn't in months. You look better, Jacob said, smiling. Lavra laughed softly. I feel better too. Maybe all this good energy you're bringing home is rubbing off on me. Jacob shook his head. It's not just me, it's you. You're strong, Lavra, stronger than anyone I know. They sat in silence for a while, enjoying each other's company. For the first time in a long time, Jacob allowed himself to dream. Not just about paying bills or surviving another month, but about a future where Lavra was healthy, where they could travel, laugh, and live without fear. The next morning, Jacob arrived at work with a renewed sense of purpose. As he settled into his desk, Evan stopped by with a folder in hand. I need to show you something, Evan said, his tone serious yet excited. Curious, Jacob followed him to a private meeting room. On the table lay several documents detailing groundbreaking medical technologies being developed by Carter Innovations. Jacob scanned the pages, his heart skipping a beat when he saw references to treatments for rare diseases like Laura's. This could help her, Jacob whispered. His hands trembling as he held the papers, Evan nodded. I thought of you when I saw these reports. If you're willing, I can arrange for Lavra to participate in the trial program. It's risky, but it might give her a chance at recovery. Tears welled up in Jacob's eyes. He wanted to thank Evan, to express how grateful he was, but words failed him. Instead, he reached out and shook Evan's hand firmly. You've already done so much for us, Jacob said, his voice choked with emotion. I don't know how to repay you, Evan smiled. You don't have to. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's payment enough. As Jacob left the meeting room, his mind raced with possibilities. This was more than just a job or a promotion. It was a lifeline. A chance to save the person he loved most in the world. Jacob Harper sat on a worn-out wooden stool outside the bustling subway station in downtown Chicago. The air was cold, and the wind carried the faint smell of exhaust fumes, mixed with the aroma of hot dogs from a nearby vendor. His hands trembled slightly as he worked on polishing an old leather shoe. The shoe's surface was cracked and scuffed, but Jacob focused hard, determined to make it shine like new. Beside him, a small cardboard sign read, "Shoe Shine, $5. Jacob wasn't proud of what his life had become. He never imagined himself sitting on a stool in the middle of a busy street, begging strangers for work. But pride didn't matter anymore. Not when your wife was sick and you couldn't afford her treatment. Not when every penny counted, and even then, it wasn't enough. His wife, Laura, lay bedridden at home. She had been diagnosed with a rare illness months ago, one that drained her strength little by little each day. The doctor said she needed expensive medication and regular treatments, but Jacob didn't have insurance. He had lost his job as a construction worker after an injury left him unable to lift heavy objects. Since then, he'd taken up odd jobs delivering packages, cleaning offices late at night, anything to bring in some money. But nothing paid well enough to cover their mounting bills. Polishing shoes was his latest attempt to scrape together cash. It wasn't much, but it was something. Every morning, Jacob would set up his small stand near the subway entrance, hoping commuters would stop and give him a chance. Some days were better than others. On good days, he made enough to buy groceries and pay part of the rent. On bad days, he barely earned enough to cover the cost of bus fare back home. Today seemed like it might be a bad day. The sun was hidden behind thick gray clouds, and the streets felt quieter than usual. People hurried past Jacob without even glancing at him. A few tossed pitying looks his way, but no one stopped. By noon, Jacob had only polished 3 pairs of shoes and earned $15. He sighed heavily and leaned back against the wall behind him, rubbing his tired eyes. The hours dragged on, and Jacob's stomach growled with hunger. He hadn't eaten since breakfast a slice of stale bread, and he couldn't afford lunch. Still, he forced himself to stay focused. If he went home early, he wouldn't have enough money for tomorrow's groceries. And if he didn't eat, that was fine. He could handle being hungry. What he couldn't handle was seeing Laura suffer. As the afternoon wore on, Jacob thought about how different his life used to be. Just 2 years ago, he and Laura had been happy. They lived in a cozy apartment on the outskirts of the city, and Jacob worked steady hours at a construction site. They weren't rich, but they got by. Laura worked part-time as a librarian, and together, they saved enough to take small vacations or go out to dinner once in a while. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. Then everything changed. Laura started feeling weak and fatigued all the time. At first, they thought it was stress or maybe a virus. But when the symptoms worsened, they went to the doctor. That's when they learned the truth. Laura had a rare autoimmune disease. The diagnosis hit them like a punch to the gut. The treatments were expensive, and without insurance, they quickly burned through their savings. Jacob tried everything to keep them afloat. He applied for loans, sold their furniture, and even borrowed money from friends and family. But no matter what he did, the debt kept piling up. Eventually, Laura had to quit her job because she was too weak to work. That left Jacob as the sole breadwinner, struggling to provide for both of them. Now here he was, sitting on a stool in the freezing cold, trying to earn a few dollars by shining shoes. It wasn't the life he dreamed of, but it was the life he had. By evening, Jacob had managed to polish 5 more pairs of shoes, bringing his total earnings for the day to $27. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He packed up his supplies and headed home, his legs aching from standing all day. When he arrived at their apartment, Jacob found Laura lying on the couch, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her face was pale, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She smiled weakly when she saw him, but Jacob could tell she was in pain. "How was your day?" she asked softly. "It was okay," Jacob lied. He didn't want to worry her. Instead, he handed her a small bag containing a loaf of bread and a carton of milk. "I got us some food." Lavra nodded gratefully, though her expression betrayed her disappointment. She knew they couldn't afford much else. After eating a simple dinner together, Jacob sat beside Lavra on the couch. He held her hand gently. Feeling the frailness of her fingers, guilt gnawed at him. He hated seeing her like this, weak, fragile, dependent on him for everything. He wished he could do more, but he didn't know how. That night, as Jacob lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, he let his mind wander. He thought about all the things he wanted to give Laura: a comfortable bed, proper medical care, a life free from worry. But those things felt impossibly out of reach. All he had was a shoeshine kit and a crumbling sense of hope. Just as sleep began to overtake him, Jacob heard the sound of footsteps outside their window. He ignored it at first, assuming it was just another neighbor coming home late. But then he heard a soft knock on the door. Confused, Jacob climbed out of bed and opened the door cautiously. Standing there was a man dressed in a crisp suit, his shoes gleaming under the dim hallway light. "Are you Jacob Harper?" the man asked. "Yes," Jacob replied, surprised. "Who are you?" The man smiled warmly. "My name is Evan Carter." "I think I can help you." Jacob blinked, unsure if he was dreaming. Who was this man? And why would he offer help to someone like Jacob? Before Jacob could ask any questions, Evan stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Let me explain," he said, and so began a conversation that would change Jacob's life forever.